What's going on, guys? And today we're continuing our Diablo 4 Hardcore Druid Companion Builds series. So the first thing we're going to do is just a brief overview of the build before we do our very first capstone dungeon. And you see the very first aspect we have on our helmet is the aspect of Cyclonic Force. And that's really just to give us a little more tankiness as well as to give our companions a little more tankiness. And then you see we picked up Disobedience on our chest because, armor is key here in the game currently. And then we have the aspect of Lightning Dancer there. And that's just to, give us a little bit more AoE damage so we can clear out those monster packs. And then we had the aspect of Might on our pants, and that's just to give us that damage reduction because we weave our basic attack skill between our core skill. And then we have Audacity on the boots. That's kind of a flex spot, but I thought it would be nice just to have that extra stun if we need it, if we get surrounded by a bunch of monsters. And then obviously the key aspect here, aspect of the Shepherd for that increased core skill damage per companion we have. And then the overcharged aspect on our neck piece because we just want that higher chance to proc. And when that aspect does proc, it does quite a bit of damage. And then the rapid aspect, obviously for faster basic attacks, so we can generate our spirit much faster off of our basic attack. And then on our ring, we have aspect of Stampede to give us that one additional companion. So we get that one additional companion on each companion's skill, which then gives us more core skill damage based off of aspect of the Shepherd. And that really rounds it out for our aspects. And then we're going to be talking about, our boons here now. So we have Weariness, Advantageous Beast on the Deer. That's where we spec'd into was the Deer. Swooping attacks on the Eagle for that extra attack speed, then Bolster to get a little more Fortify off of our defensive skill, and then Overload to get more damage output with our lightning skills. Now, I will say in the Wolf Tree that that specific boon is a flex spot, so you can change that to your however you like. And then for our basic skill here, our basic attack skill, we have Wind Shear, Enhanced Wind Shear, and then Wild Wind Shear for resource generation. And then we follow that down into the very first passive here. We pick up a point in Heart of the Wild, just so we can grab 3 points in Wild Impulses to give our core skills 15% increased damage. Then we have Lightning Storm, which we've maxed out. And then from there, we end up picking up Enhanced Lightning Storm, and that's just to grab up Primal Lightning Storm so we have that extra chance to immobilize enemies. And then in our defensive skill tree, we have Cyclone Armor maxed out just for that extra reduction in damage for me and my companions. Enhanced Cyclone. And then we move up into the Preserving Cyclone Armor just to give us more damage reduction every 10 seconds for a 2-second duration. I feel like that could probably be buffed a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit too low. And then, especially given how powerful Bulwark is. Then we have 1 point in Wolves. And then we move up from Wolves into the Ferocious Wolf Pack passive just to generate some Fortify for ourselves. Just to give us a little bit more tankiness as well as, continue to keep those damage reduction and damage increases off of our gear affixes. And then we have 1 point in Poison Creeper, Enhanced Poison Creeper, and then we did pick up Brutal Poison Creeper for that 20% increased critical hit chance for enemies currently under the effects of our Poison Creeper active skill. Then we have 1 point in Ravens. We pick up, after that we pick up obviously Enhanced Ravens for that 5% critical strike increase against enemies hit by Ravens, and then Brutal Ravens to give us those 2 additional Ravens, not really for the basic attack damage, but again, more for the Shepherd aspect on our 2-hand weapon. And then we move into the Elemental Exposure passive. It gives us that 10% chance to make enemies vulnerable. Obviously, that needs a massive buff, considering all the other skills in this build that give you vulnerability on a much higher chance. And then Charged Atmosphere, another passive that needs a pretty large buff there. Then we grab up Electric Shock with 3 points, and that's just to give us that increased chance to cause immobilization as well as a damage increase to enemies that are under the effects of Immobilize. And then Bad Omen with a 30% chance to give us a Lightning Bolt that deals a decent amount of damage to enemies that are vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned. Again, probably could use a little bit of a buff on that one. Then we move down into our ultimate passes. We have Defiance. Gives us 12% increased nature magic at max, 3 for 3. Then we ended up moving into Natural Disaster, continuing to pump up those elemental damages. Because we're using storm skills, it gives us that increased damage to enemies that are stunned, immobilized, or knocked back. And those are the kinds of skills that we have. And then Resonance. Obviously, we're probably not gonna get the Earth, the triple bonus off of that, but 6% more damage is pretty nice. And then Circle of Life just for HP generation. You could probably flex that top passive there, though. And then Defensive Posture, we're only grabbing 1 point in that because we're just trying to move through that tree. So we got 1 point in Defensive Posture. Nothing too big here. Probably needs a buff. Nature's Resolve, and then really we're just trying to get Unrestrained. So we can reduce crowd control and pairing effects as much as possible. And because we will generally have 50% Fortify all the time, we're going to have that triple effect from that, giving us 27% crowd control and pair reduction. And then for our unique passives, we are going to roll Perfect Storm. Pretty much I think I'm going to stick with Perfect Storm throughout the duration of this build. I don't really think I'm going to get much use out of Nature's Fury as much as I thought, and I didn't really like Earth and Might. It didn't feel as good as I thought it would. So I'm just going to stick it out with Perfect Storm. It does a decent amount of damage, and it does give us some sustain. When we move into the late game, it's not as beneficial because we'll have more sustain that we probably won't need that kind of small amount of, one spirit. It probably does need a buff overall. I feel like 15% could probably just be a flat damage increase instead of having some kind of conditional, such as, on vulnerable or immobilized enemies. And then we move in. We're taking our potion real quick because we are about to jump right into our first capstone dungeon here. And I'm not, like I said, I'm doing it at level 48. Some people like to do it level 50. When I'm running builds that are closer to meta builds, I probably clear this at level 44. But I wanted to get a little bit more in terms of, reducing that damage dealt, damage reduction we have from that level gap. Just because I'm not really running a meta build, but I didn't want to have the Paragon tree to kind of pretty much make this a, super easy, playthrough. And that's really just because I don't think that would be a real reflection of how well the build would play, because, you wouldn't really, I don't think it would be reasonable to have that, going into your first capstone dungeon. But you can see here we're moving pretty well through the dungeon. It didn't seem like we were taking much damage overall. I did have a couple instances where I had to use potions, but we did pretty well here. Our wolves are doing what they're supposed to. They're tanking up. Our lightning damage is pretty good. And honestly, I'd have to say, I played a bit past this already. And so far, I'm pretty happy with how well the lightning storm damage is scaling into the mid game as I'm kind of progressing through tier 3. And I will have those videos coming out soon. But I am a little bit behind. But this is what we're doing now. So you see our damage is pretty good. We're moving into the first boss of this capstone dungeon, and that's just this first set of 4 monsters. And I kind of like this fight because you have to kind of use a little strategy here. I always kill the physician first, and then really after that it doesn't matter too much to me. But I did start to feel like on this fight specifically, seeing the cons of having Lightning Storm as your main skill, core skill, just because it's a little bit too target locked, and one pulse of Lightning Storm won't necessarily hit all the enemies. You throw a tornado out, it's just moving through all the enemies. Keying off a lot of multiple ticks of damage. Obviously, it costs a lot more spirit, but they do last quite a long period of time. And then we move into the second part of the dungeon, and that's the annoying slay all the enemies in the dungeon. But overall, I was pretty happy here. I'm able to sustain pretty well in terms of keeping up my resources and keeping that damage coming out. And there is a nice little benefit of being able to attack enemies from a distance away. Now I will say this build would this build will see a significant boost in viability if in fact we could zoom our screen out more. Obviously, because the further I can zoom out, the more enemies I can see before they can actually react to me sometimes. So I really would like them to kind of obviously move the camera back, but that's pretty much everybody. And then we move into the creator here, the final boss in the dungeon. And overall, like I said, I think the damage was pretty decent. Obviously, I'm not playing the best here, but I kind of felt like I didn't have to. All the different aspects I had, I wasn't really taking that much damage. I never really felt like I was going to die or that I needed to play like super focused here. And I'm kind of just sitting back, casting my lightning storm and letting my wolves kind of tank up the boss occasionally. But overall, pretty fun fight. Obviously, if I was running a much more powerful build, it'd be much faster. But I didn't really feel like the speed was too slow, especially for the fact that I didn't have my Paragon points. But overall, pretty happy with the build and excited to kind of get into the mid game in tier 3. But like I said, we're done here. We finished our first capstone dungeon. We're firmly out of the early game. I'm excited to start tier 3. But that's it for the video, guys. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and keep coming back. I'm enjoying making this series. I'm probably going to make a few more videos here. It is going to get a little bit longer between videos just because it takes a little longer to go from tier 3 to tier 4. And also, I am at Nico Rex over on Twitch, so come check me out if you enjoy these videos. And till next time, guys, peace out.